Breaking news, a Florida appeals court has just overturned the $213 million judgment for Maya Kowalski. You saw this trial right here on Court TV, the Take Care of Maya's civil trial.
There's a Netflix series on that as well. It was a riveting case. Maya Kowalski and her family sued Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital, claiming that its actions led to Maya's mother taking her own life. That was a big part of it, the emotional side of it. Trial lasted 8 weeks. Jurors heard from family members, doctors, nurses, and tons of experts.
That's right, and ultimately the jury, after listening to all of that, found the hospital liable on all 7 counts, including false imprisonment, medical negligence, battery, fraud, and intentional infliction of emotional distress on the family. Now, here's what the appeals court said, though. The appeals court has found that the trial court erred in the interpretation of the law, meaning that all 7 do not stand. Instead, only 4 of the charges can be, well, not charges in the civil case, only 4 of the claims can be retried. These are false imprisonment, the battery, medical negligence, and then there is a 4th that can also be retried, the intentional emotional infliction, rather, of emotional distress claim.
Yeah. Let's bring in Mackenzie Joy Brennan. Wow, this is a shocker.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's such a huge finding in terms of damages by this jury. It was a case that we watched play out over 8 weeks. It was a long one and a ton of emotion. Your take on this and then the next steps, what's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, this is such a tough case on so many fronts. I feel like it's an intersection of all these issues that are so easily misinterpreted on both sides. You have a complex, difficult to diagnose and treat, rare pain disorder on the one hand, and those are so often misunderstood. You also have a parent especially dying by suicide, and that can often cloud people's judgments. I'm not saying that's necessarily what happened here. And then Munchausen by proxy is something that, you know, relatively misunderstood by the public at large, maybe overrepresented in commonality because of how bizarre it is when we do hear about cases. But I could see that influencing a reporter, a mandatory reporter, which obviously comes into play here with that kind of Good Samaritan protection statute that's now been reinterpreted on the appeal. So many pieces that will make this, I'm sure, difficult even on the retrial. And you think about the folks left behind, especially the daughter, having to go through this process again. And obviously the intentional infliction of emotional distress tends to be one of the more difficult claims to prove anywhere. And I imagine if it's standing in greater isolation now and the impact that may have on evidence, it's going to complicate it further, potentially make it harder to prove.
And once this is brand new breaking news, once we've been able to do a deep dive and read the opinion, we'll know actually what law the Court of Appeals says that the trial court misinterpreted, because obviously it's a legal basis. They've said now you have to retry. These 4 are the only claims that can be retried. But the emotional aspect of this, I watched the Netflix series, I watched every day of trial here on Court TV, and the emotion of it all, the emotion of the father, the emotion of the child, the emotion of those at the hospital on videotape, because they believe that the mother made this up and that nothing was wrong with the child, versus the parents saying, no, clearly something is wrong with our child. We've done nothing wrong. It's a very emotional case, which is why I would suspect that even upon retrial of 4 claims, a jury might find still against the hospital and still might find damages against the hospital. What do you think, Mackenzie?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's certainly, as all of us know, because of the Netflix documentary, it's really, really hard to even think anything that would cut against, especially the daughter's interpretation of things. Based on my preliminary reading, it looks like the misinterpretation that the appeal hinges on is this Florida law that essentially is a Good Samaritan type protection that I think immunizes the mandated reporters against claims like this, and they're saying that the lower court misinterpreted that in the verdict itself. So that I could see interfering with a lot of stuff and potentially with damages too.
All right. Again, the breaking news, appeals court reverses that civil decision and that huge judgment.